This is Lily.
And Mikey, we're back again
Yep.
to entertain and enlighten your lives.
Because we know we're so enlightening.
Maybe.
That's questionable.
That might be up for debate there. So
today we're going to do something that we haven't done before. We're going to do a...
are you sure we've never done it before?
We've never done it before.
Ooh.
We're going to talk about a person, a real person, a war hero. A hero.
A person?
Yes, a war hero.
I love war heroes.
Yeah. So I thought it would be kind of nice. You know, I have a lot of respect for people who do difficult jobs. And especially because sometimes they do difficult jobs that aren't things that they would support. But we do difficult jobs anyways. And one of the things special about this story is it happened during Vietnam, which was the most unsupported war.
Yeah.
It was the, only war where when people were coming home, they were literally like dumping blood on them sometimes and like spitting at them and calling them like baby killers.
Dang hippies.
They're supposed
so
to be
much
peaceful.
for free love, man.
Well, no, the thing that I don't get about it is those people, like, not all of them, but a lot of them were drafted.
Yeah.
And either way, the government was going over there. They were trying to fight communism. And, people have all kinds of other theories and different things of what they think the war was about. But
yeah,
that doesn't have to do with the fact that these men still went out there and fought and risked and lost their lives. And
absolutely.
Deserve respect.
Yeah. Anytime I run into a veteran from Vietnam, I make sure that I let them know how much, we appreciate that they sacrificed for our country.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not you believed in the cause.
Yeah. It doesn't change the fact
they
that
were
these are
young men that were taken from their homes and the draft was being instituted. Like our father served in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
He knew he was going to get drafted for the army.
Yeah.
And so he actually enlisted.
This is a true story.
And pretty crazy. He was like, okay, I'm probably going to get drafted anyway. I may as well choose where I go.
Yeah.
So he went to the naval recruitment office.
Yeah.
Got signed up. And his mother was freaking out because she didn't know where he was. It's not like they had a cell phone then where she could call him.
Yeah.
So he was gone and she saw his draft letter in the mail for the army. But he was already at the naval recruitment office. So he signed up for the Navy. Mm-hmm. And so they allowed him to continue his service in the Navy. And he ended up serving on the nuclear submarines during Vietnam.
Later, he ended up doing something in flight.
Well, I think that if the story is correct, if I'm remembering properly, he kind of started as like a cook or in the kitchen on the submarine, and then worked his way up and ended up becoming the helmsman, which is the guy who actually steers the submarine.
I believe you're right. I'm just saying, like, later after
he was in a nuclear submarine
after he left the Navy,
tracking the Russians.
After he left the Navy, he actually did something with like the Air Force or whatever for a short time.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and I remember him coming home from one of those and me not recognizing who he was because he changed his facial hair, and he'd brought me some little like.
Oh, did he shave? Did he shave the stash?
I think it was that. He was stashless and I didn't know who he was. And I remember feeling embarrassed that I didn't know it was my dad when I answered the door.
Well, he would look a lot different. I remember seeing him when I was a kid after he shaved his. He's got like not like a handlebar stash, but like a really bush full
he
mustache.
Used to call it his caterpillar when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Because I would, sometimes I would point it out to him and he'd be like, oh, it's just my caterpillar.
And he's still sporting it to this day.
Yes,
anytime he ever shaved it, we were like, weird, grow it back.
He's a stash man. It's what's it, November or?
Oh, when they do No Shave November?
Yeah, it's like that for his mustache all the time. But anyway, so the person we're talking about actually signed up for the military voluntarily, and he did it
voluntarily. I'm going to volunteer.
Yes, exactly.
Potato.
Anyway, he signed up on purpose before that because when he was a kid, he actually saw in the movie theater, like, paratroopers jumping out of planes and Roosevelt, like, thanking men for fighting against the Japs and all that on the screen, and he wanted to be able to do that. Like, that's what he, as a child.
So it got instilled in him at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here's the thing. I was kind of obsessed with Army and guns and stuff like that when I was a little kid. And in fact, I think my first word my mom told me was weapon.
I think that was probably the worst.
She told me, other than like mom or dad, like she literally told me weapon was my first word that I started using.
That's hilarious.
But but I grew up playing with Army guys and, toy guns like a lot of kids in the 80s and early 90s. We definitely
did a lot of G.I. Joes.
G.I. Joe, real American hero.
Yo, Joe.
But yeah, I actually almost joined the military right after 9/11 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad actually talked me out of it. I was really close to signing up with the Marines.
Wow.
Can you imagine me being a Marine?
Dude, there was a lot of Marines.
I can't even hurt a fly, man. I'm so passive.
Stuff. I've known.
No, I'm grateful for all the men that toured in Iraq and Afghanistan, but I feel like I literally potentially dodged a bullet there,
or a bomb.
But no disrespect for those that served, but I'm glad it wasn't, because it wouldn't have been a good thing for me knowing myself now. So I'm glad my dad had that foresight. But anyway, back to our person
kind of a soft person.
I'm a softy.
He's a softy boy. Man.
I'm a cuddler. I'm a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, but he can be scary when he gets mad. Like, sometimes he can be pretty. He's got 5 kids. He has to like use that dad voice.
Hey, sometimes I can be the Papa Bear. You don't mess with my 2 little girls.
Yeah,
I'll mess you up.
Exactly. But yeah, in our family, we have like a strong respect for military personnel.
Thank you. Salute to all you veterans out there. Thank you for your service.
And thank you to all those who are currently serving and the sacrifices that affect your private and professional life. The parts of important things in life that you miss to do your jobs. So
yeah, absolutely.
And that's one reason why I picked what I did today.
I think you picked nicely. I want to learn more about this gentleman from Vietnam who was intrigued and fascinated by being a paratrooper.
Yeah. So this is Roy Benavidez. And another nice, cool thing about him is his parents were immigrants. And
which country?
From like across the border. Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he's
the first generation Mexican American.
So he was born, exactly. He was born in Texas, and
or as they would say, Texas.
Yeah, and he lost like both of his parents to tuberculosis. His dad first.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I know, right? And then
that's so sad. How old was he when they died? Do you know?
He was little when his dad died, like really little.
Oh.
And then his mother remarried to a man, and she had a daughter. And the man really loved the daughter. He did not mistreat her 2 sons because he had one brother. He did not mistreat them, but he did not
wasn't really engaging with them. Didn't show interest.
Yeah, he didn't have interest in being their father. So there was a lot of attention given to.
So he was a provider, but not much of a real father figure to them.
He liked his daughter. He didn't really, want to be involved, I guess you could say, with them.
That's too bad. Yeah, and salute to all you dads out there.
Yeah.
That father children that aren't originally your own. In fact, I've got a brother who married my sister. Well, he's my brother-in-law.
Yeah.
But he took on a father situation from my sister who had a baby before marrying him. So
yeah, and we've got a nephew who's doing the same. And I've had a second husband who was there during a large portion of my children's life and took on that role.
So salute to all you dads who do the deal.
Yeah.
Even if they don't come from your loins.
Our dads, because a dad and a person who provides life are two different things sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Family isn't always blood.
Exactly. So anyway, so he grew up in not, he wasn't well off at all. He was under poverty. And they were doing okay while his mom was married to this guy. They did, back then there was still segregation going on, and it wasn't just blacks. Hispanics also got segregated.
Sure.
And like he talked about how when he went to the movies, like where he saw about the paratroopers, how they used to get coins thrown from rich people or, well-dressed people they'd throw them down on the ground and watch the kids chase it. And at first, when he was little, it was a game, and then he realized that it was degrading.
Yeah, it was.
And they'd laugh when they'd do it. But he would do it anyway, just to, and he realized the price for the movie was his dignity.
Oh.
And he used to
So it took on a whole deeper meaning for him when he realized.
Yeah, and he actually would hit other kids and stuff before he'd go for the money to make sure he got money. And sometimes enough to get ice cream even. So he turned into a kind of a scrapper.
I'd knock some punk ass kid down for some ice cream.
And a movie?
Yeah. Frick yeah, man. Get out the way.
So anyway, he ended up kind of throughout his childhood having an issue with kind of being a hothead and a scrapper.
Okay. So he had a little bit of a temper?
Yeah. And
little chip on his shoulder?
He also kind of got in a little bit of trouble when he was a teenager. He got even arrested before. He'd just start to fight with people. And there was finally a time when he beat someone up. And afterwards, he realized that he didn't need to do that and that it was a loss of his temper. I believe the guy beat him in a wrestling match or something. And was maybe not so great about it or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, he beat the guy up, and then he had someone he respected point out that it wasn't, something that a godly thing to do or a kind thing to do or even something honorable to do. There was no reason that he should do that. And it actually finally set in for him, and he stopped. But his mom ended up dying of tuberculosis as well. And he ended up, him and his brother were orphaned. And before she died, she sent a letter to her late husband, so their biological father's brother, and said that the boys were going to be orphans. And he went and got them with his family. And there were 7 of them. And they just pulled these boys in. And as what they would do is they'd go out and work fields or whatever for money. And then they'd go to school some during, school years, but they worked alongside their family.
Uh-huh.
And his uncle was a really good person. And he always was talking about the pride of the Benavidez name and how honor is important and the pride that they should have in being Americans, Hispanic Americans. And he actually...
And Mexicans should be proud, man. It's one of the most beautiful countries on the planet.
Yeah.
I love Mexico. I love the culture there. Incredible country.
Well, yeah. And I mean, people come from all over the place. And I feel based on where your ancestors came from, you shouldn't get treated less.
Right, absolutely.
I mean,
ultimately, all Americans at one point are immigrants.
Yeah.
Except for, of course, the Native Americans that were here first.
Yeah, and all I have to say to them is I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Because I can't undo what happened. And I definitely don't even know where I would send what part of me if I had to go back to where I came from.
Right.
Because most of us are mutts.
Irish, Danish, French, English. We're just we're a big European fruit salad, just a lot of pillaging going on. I know we've talked about this before in some other episodes, but we are very Caucasian, but European.
We're definitely white.
White.
But anyway, I feel like pigment, is not a an issue to be a human.
No, we're all creatures of God, in my opinion, and we're all brothers and sisters. So
there's some cultural differences that happen and stuff, but we all are freaking human, and we all have the same needs and wants, and like freaking, we're all wired human when we're born.
Beautiful thing about the United States, man. Life,
except for the aliens,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? We all have that. An inalienable right.
Yeah, because I mean, like now that they're saying that there are UFOs, I'm just saying a little holler out to any extraterrestrials here. No, but really, like, I love that his uncle always taught them to be respectable people, and he actually ended up even becoming the first. His uncle ended up becoming the first. Police officer that was Hispanic and they offered him the job because he was such a good man.
Wow.
And he said that he would only take the job because they at first were telling him he could only arrest Hispanic people. And he said, I won't take the job unless I can arrest.
Yeah, I need to be a cop.
Yeah.
Like any other cop.
They agreed to that because he was such a fair man, and the fact that he knew Spanish was helpful. And so yeah, he ended up being able to have that pride.
Cool.
Of being that in that
and
area.
This is the gentleman we're talking about's uncle?
Yeah. He was let's see, his uncle is let's see.
Scrolling.
Sorry, I can't
Scrolling.
His name. He deserves to be acknowledged though. It just like, I pulled it up in Wiki, but I listened to a whole book on him.
Oh, wow.
And
so he was quite the individual himself.
Yeah. So his family were the descendants of the founders of Benavidez, Texas, which I didn't know there was a Benavidez, Texas. So
wow.
There was a lot of pride there.
Cool.
So it doesn't, why is it not, I think that's kind of dumb that it doesn't bring up, it just says his uncle.
Okay.
So,
well, that's all right.
Yeah. His grandfather. His grandfather was also a really good man, but he learned to work hard. He dropped out of school when he was only 15 because he decided to just go to full-time like
work.
Yeah. And he regretted that.
Yeah.
And so it was really important for him to instill in his children and other people's children that an education is important in your life. So, and you'll understand more where I'm saying other people's children later. But so basically he gets into he grows up, he gets into the army, he marries the girl that he'd had the hots for years, and he gets a job working as a driver at a base. And he keeps trying to put in to be a paratrooper or to get
back into that initial video or clips that he saw that got him intrigued.
Which is why he wanted to be there. And like a lot of people, once they're a driver for some, sergeant or major or whatever on a base, that's a very cushiony job, and you're not doing, anything really intense. It's, it's a pretty easy job. You're just being a driver. So like usually once people become those, they don't try to get out of that. But he kept putting in for the paratrooper spot. And he actually got really lucky one day because a man came through who was in charge of that and asked him, hey, would you want to be a paratrooper? And he was like, because he was trying to think of the best way to like broach the topic with him. Because he was hoping to ask him without being rude. But the guy literally was like, hey, have you ever thought about being
You brought it up, huh?
Yeah. And he was like, actually, I've put in like 5 requests and nobody's accepted me into the program. And this guy was like, oh, really? And he's like, well, when you get to the spot where you can reapply, you go ahead and do that. And that guy actually ended up pushing him through.
Okay.
And he went.
So he ended up being kind of an instrument in getting in the program?
He did. And he was very proud of that when it happened. And after that, he decided that he wanted to go for special forces.
Special forces, huh?
Yeah. And he ended up making it into special forces.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is like he actually ended up getting hurt in Vietnam. He stepped on like by a mine, and it didn't actually injure him physically, but it threw him so hard that there was like a brain separation.
Quit hitting your mic, Lily.
I know everyone's gonna be like ready to kill me. There was like, I'm all trying to make the side, there was like a brain thing that happened.
Well, the blast can send, shock waves.
Yeah. So
that can be very damaging.
Yes. So he ended up being told, he woke up in a hospital. They actually didn't know if he'd even wake up because they felt like everything got rattled in there too much.
Yeah.
And they told him he probably would never walk again.
Oh, no.
And he didn't accept that answer. And
no, because he's a warrior.
Exactly.
You can't tell me I won't walk again.
So this is what he started doing is he started, after the nurses and stuff would leave at night, he would sit there and like flop himself out of the hospital bed onto the hard floor. And he would start wiggling and moving around and trying to like get up and use his body. And he'd get caught and they'd put him back in bed, And it got to the point where it was like a game at night for the other guys who were there. Because they'd all like cheer him on, because he'd break out of bed at night and start like working on his thing. And he finally got to where he could stand up all by himself. And it was a lot of work for him. And when they caught him standing up, they decided to put him in
like physical therapy?
Yeah, physical therapy. Because they realized
this guy's determined. He's going to walk. We were wrong.
It done. So, yeah, he was told he wouldn't walk, and he managed it. He couldn't even speak when he first woke up for a while and everything. So this guy, like, completely turned that around. And despite all of that, he got himself back into shape and everything and was able to complete Hell Week and everything else. And
complete rehabilitation from everything.
Special forces. So there was a group in the military. There's some stuff, we didn't know about before. And something special about this story is he was actually an untold hero in the light of that he did not get the recognition he deserved for years. And it was actually a reporter for the local area of where he had lived most of his life, found the story about him and how he'd gone and done some great things and that he hadn't gotten a Medal of Honor for it. And the reason that they were saying was because nobody who was actually on the ground was around still to like tell what happened, although there were people in helicopters who could see from above.
Okay.
So
sounds pretty hardcore.
Yeah. So this story, like, there was somebody named Brian O'Connor who he helped save on the day that earned him this medal, who came forward and went through the process of reliving the worst day of his life to say, yes, I was on the ground and I did see this, and this man deserves the Medal of Honor, not just a Purple Heart or whatever the heck. And, anyway, it's a very touching story. And this man ended up actually getting later a Medal of Honor from the president himself. And he ended up getting asked to go to schools and everything and speak to people. And he was very happy always to do that because he felt like children were very important. And so he would always go and like talk to him about how he dropped out of school and how important an education is. And
so are we going to get into more details about what happened on the ground that merited the Congressional Medal of Honor?
Yes. Like I what's it? I need a backup. But anyway, so oh God. Okay. So basically there was this group which I started to talk about, And it's one of the reasons that it took so long for him to get recognized is because there was a group that was called SOG. And it was a special recon group. Because is what was going
SOG.
on. Yeah. So is what was going on during the war was there were Viet Congs or whatever who were going down into Cambodia. And Cambodia was saying that they weren't helping and that they weren't supporting that, but they were setting up bases over the borderline into Cambodia because, the U.S. forces were not supposed to be going into Cambodia and having warfare, right?
Yeah.
That was not okay. Like, Cambodia was out of it and didn't want them coming in. So they had this problem because they had these supplies coming up through Cambodia and even like bases basically for the Viet Congs that were down there, and they were just hiding over the border. And then they'd come over into South Vietnam and attack people, right?
Oh, okay.
So these groups would very secretly cross over the border.
I love how you do quotations there. Like it's actually a quote. Thanks, Dr. Evil. Air quotes. Secretly.
They would secretly go over and they would handle some situations over there, right? So
it was a little hush-hush operation in Cambodia?
So there was a Ho Chi Minh Trail. It's called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, where there was a lot of stuff that was getting moved back and forth.
Okay.
And
these are supplies to the United States troops through Cambodia?
No, these are supplies that are being passed to our enemy.
Oh.
Viet Congs.
Okay.
In Cambodia.
But I thought Cambodia wasn't supposed to be involved or wasn't involved.
They weren't, and they weren't.
Oh, that's what the air quotes were for?
They weren't, and they weren't.
Yeah.
Like, they would let us do some things that they weren't supposed to sometimes, but they'd let them do some things that they weren't supposed to. I mean, of course they didn't.
Right.
Cambodia never did anything.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
Zero.
They did not support other communists.
They were just Cambodians.
They did not support other communists, and they never let the United States go and do anything in Cambodia involving the war between the Vietnam and America.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Officially.
Unless they got paid monies, probably.
I'm not even going to go there.
Who knows?
Whatever the reasoning is, there was some stuff that happened, right? And they actually realized later that that's probably why it took so long. And it kept getting pushed aside because they didn't want to talk about where he was when he did what he did.
Oh.
Okay.
Classified.
Yes. So.
Information not privy to.
Yeah. So basically, a group of men was sent over into Cambodia because there was this road that they were using with a lot of Russian trucks to bring in supplies. And they wanted them to steal one of those trucks and take it so they could use it for whatever, I don't know. But
probably some recon mission.
Something. They wanted them to take one, though. So when you would go during Vietnam, they would watch and listen for helicopters. And if they'd hear helicopters come in, then they'd try to go and hone in on that area because troops were, dropped. Probably.
Yeah.
And they usually drop down, and then if they get engaged after a certain point, they'll just go pull them. They don't want to risk it. Well, these guys get dropped down on the ground, and some of them accidentally run into a patrol, a Viet Cong patrol, and they ended up having to shoot two of them. So another thing, you hear gunfire.
Yeah.
Then they come, right?
Yeah, that'll draw some attention.
Yeah, so they report in that they have been compromised and that they need to be pulled. But there was someone who was in charge of making sure that this mission happened, was there overseeing, had been told that they needed to make sure this happened. So he told them not to pull them. And there was an argument that happened between some top people about this because he kept
how
saying,
they handled
pull
the
him. Yeah,
situation.
and he's all, no, pull him. And they're hearing over the radio that this guy's like, no, you guys need to continue anyways. We need to get this done.
Do the mission.
Yep.
Complete the task.
You must complete mission. So these soldiers who have like some of the people who are with them are actual Cambodians who were sympathizers and who weren't okay with what was going on over there in Vietnam and were like, or came originally and lived there, whatever. They were people who would actually help, our military with the war efforts. And they'd go over and help try to be like translators. They'd try to be like, they were Asian, so they looked like they fit in. They could also speak the language and help like keep their cover, right?
Okay.
So these guys like walk forward and run into some other soldiers and they try to pretend like they're just Cambodians, and it doesn't go over well. And they end up in a gunfight, right? And so they finally decide they need to go pull them out, right? Well, when they send in a helicopter to pull them out, at that point, they've already been found, right? And they send a couple helicopters and one of them gets shot down.
Oh, no.
So now we have more men on the ground who are injured. And we have other men who are under fire, and some of them are getting hit and taken out as well, right?
Oh, wow.
So it's turning into a bigger situation. And
it's starting to sound like Black Hawk Down.
Yeah. Basically, it is. It kind of, actually, I didn't think about that, but it basically is because...
I love that movie.
Yeah. So
I love war movies. They suck me in, man. I just love them.
So now we have a serious situation here, right? And Benavidez wasn't sent on this mission. He actually was back at the base. He had just gotten accepted into the team.
Okay.
That was
he was now officially that special forces guy.
Because he actually had a friend in the team who was sent on that mission.
Oh, wow.
And he was excited to go and be part of the team, and he understood that it was like in a really dangerous spot. And actually, like after he got hurt, he ended up having his first child, his first daughter. He had 2 daughters and a son. But after he met his daughter, he realized that he loved his fellow soldiers the same way. He felt the same way about them that he felt about his child when he saw his child. Mm. And that was why he wanted to re-enlist so bad and be there, because he had that maternal like love for his military brethren.
Yeah.
Which I think is very sweet. And he felt like he could do more. Like he hadn't done enough.
Well, you have a lot of people that would re-enlist on tours because they wanted to watch out for their brothers in arms. Mm-hmm. Like if you ever looked at the story of the sniper that was served in Afghanistan. Yeah. Chris, what was his name? I'm trying to remember his name.
Oh, I can't remember. Huntsman? Or
one of the most
wasn't Huntsman.
Decorated
I know what
snipers.
I can't remember what you're okay, I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember his name right now. It's like, because you said something.
I could have sworn it's Chris, but I might be wrong. Don't hate me or don't judge me. But yeah, he re-enlisted at the peril of his own family many times and went back on further tours because he felt this responsibility to protect the Marines that were on the ground, because he was up oftentimes, or most of the time, he was sniping and he was watching their backs from afar. And so he felt this obligation. Chris Kyle. So I got the first name right. For you. Thank you. Thank you, interwebs.
I know, right?
Thank you, internet. We don't have to wonder anymore. At least I got the first name right.
You did.
But I love that movie. And his death was really tragic because he was spending time with vets to help them deal with PTSD. Yeah, and one of them went ham nuts on him and killed him. But he kept going out and out. And he's like, if I don't protect these soldiers, who is? And he felt this moral obligation as like a protector of them. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, even if talking about Black Hawk Down, so many people went back in there even after more and more people were down and everything, because they were not okay with just
they didn't want to leave anyone behind. Yep.
Yeah. And that's another thing that's very like the camaraderie that's in the military and the caring for each other. I feel like is something that's very special and a sacred thing. and it should be respected.
Well, and a lot of these people that join the military have similar stories: lack of education, lack of structure in their life.
Yeah, some of them even got arrested.
They ran into problems with the law, or they had problems with authority.
Yeah,
and then they find a home in the military where they can harness and put forth their aggression towards something positive.
Yeah,
and then their life is structured.
Yeah, exactly. And not only that, they feel like they have purpose.
Yeah.
And they do. And it means something. It really does. And I feel like one thing I've noticed is a regular thing that I've heard, knowing a lot of military people throughout my life and from books I've read and different stories, because I've always had a interest in wars and history and warfare and everything. But the fact that usually when you talk to anyone who's considered a hero, they'll tell you,
I'm not
the hero.
Yeah.
The people who are dead or who died are the hero. Or this other guy's the hero.
Well, and they always tell them, I was just doing my duty.
Yeah.
I was just doing my job.
And,
and there are other people that died and never got recognized.
And they should have gotten it.
And it can even act as a place of shame or hard for them to accept when they get recognized.
I'm still alive, and now here I have this medal, and my brothers died a terrible death that day, and some of them saved my life.
Yeah.
So I understand, that's got to be a lot to carry. And, it's that's a gift, though. And I hope that those people in that situation remember that the people who died for them and with them would want them to live the life that they couldn't.
Right.
And would be happy for them to still be here.
Absolutely.
So I just want to throw that out there for anyone who has a hard time with that.
Continuation of the story.
Exactly.
So he has a friend that was part of the group that's in action right now that's in trouble.
Yes.
And
he was a pilot.
He is about to be engaged to help in this situation.
So
Tell me more.
He didn't actually even get engaged. This is the cool thing about this guy, is he's over there and he's on his way to the mess hall, and he's got his hot sauce in his pocket to throw on his food.
I love hot sauce.
The way to make every meal better is you throw your hot sauce. And he was going over there, and these guys were coming back wounded. And they said that there were still guys there on the ground, and they're trying to send out people. So he says, "Oh well, let me go and help," because they've got a helicopter down now, and then they've got another guy. These other guys out there, and the group on the ground, there's always that problem of when the helicopters fly over, you want them to find you, but if you're not careful, you'll also signal to the enemy where you are, right?
Right. Yeah.
So they're trying to kind of stay hidden, but they finally realized they had to get out in an open space where they could be seen by the helicopters who were coming.
Right.
So they ended up out by an anthill type thing to kind of take cover in. And it wasn't good because they were sitting there literally taking bullets. And this Brian O'Connor, who survived, he wasn't the only one that was saved that day, but there were others who later died in Vietnam in other battles or died later in other wars. You know what I'm saying? There just wasn't really, when it got brought up again, there wasn't really people left who were still alive that had been on the ground.
Okay.
That there were people who had been in the helicopters above the ground, who were flying over the area trying to get into a position where they could land. Because, they'd be trying to shoot at the enemy and not get shot down.
Right.
And still get in and get these guys, right?
Yeah.
So he ends up jumping on one of the helicopters and just saying, "Can I come?" And all he has on him is a knife. He realizes after they take off, he grabbed a med bag because he found out there were people out there hurt, and one of them was his friend. And he had a knife and hot sauce in his pocket. That was it. A med bag, knife, and hot sauce.
Well, I tell you what, you put some hot sauce on the edge of that blade, and you have a fiery weapon.
Oh, I think that's one of your best.
What?
I think that's one of your.
Did I just change your life?
You've ever told.
You get your blade, you put some hot sauce on it, and you've got a fiery weapon. Eh?
That's taking the dad joke to another level.
Yeah. So, I do what I can, you know? I got to do something.
So he jumps in.
I got to interject with some silly. This is a very serious topic. You're explaining everything.
It is. And people died. Like a lot of, people died in this. So he ends up jumping on this helicopter and just comes along, right? And he's like, oh, crap. I only have my knife. All right. And he's like, well, I'm still going to help. I'm going to do this. So they go in and there's like 2 helicopters, one, like kind of back up the other one. And, they have like another one on wait just in case they need them, because it is a situation.
On standby.
Yeah. So one of the guys who ended up on standby, like, he was supposed to be going home soon. And he kind of like, I'm on standby, right? Kind of thing when it came to the situation. And that was something that he's never gotten over. Yeah. Because the pilot of the other helicopter who ended up going in first died.
Yeah. No, in fact, some of the most gnarly stories and the most PTSD vets from Vietnam you'll ever meet were these helicopter pilots that had to fly in and fly out of these situations. One of my, a person I admire from my life, he ended up being a successful contractor and businessman later, but he was a helicopter pilot in Vietnam. And they saw a lot of crazy stuff. I mean, because they're in there getting shot at while they're going in hot, and then they're picking up and pulling out all these guys that are nearly dead or I mean, there's it'd be a really crazy situation. So I can not I guess I wouldn't say I would support the guy's behavior, but I could see how when you're getting close to being done and you're in a situation like that, how it would be easy to shirk a little bit.
Yeah. And
to be scared and allow fear.
And this is the thing, is he was actually told that they intended to keep him as the backup because they knew he was leaving soon.
Oh.
But because he didn't say, no, you should just send me as the first one anyway, because he was just like, yeah.
He went along with it.
Like, he wouldn't let that go.
Yeah.
But like, so it wasn't like he was supposed to be the one. It was the fact that he was just like, yeah, I want to be that one because I'm leaving in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
That he just couldn't live with. And it always bothered him. And, my heart goes out to him because that's hard, but like, I hope that he was able to come to terms with that and let it go at some point. I don't know if he's still alive or not right now. But anyway, because this is, a long time ago. And,
a lot of the Vietnam vets right now are in their 70s.
Yeah, they're like in that time.
70s or 80s.
Or whatever, yeah. And some of them, depending on when they joined, were not young guys when they went in.
Right.
It's like Benavidez had already been in the military for a while. He wasn't like a little spring chicken.
Right.
He'd already gotten up to special forces and done all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, so his helicopter starts to go in that he's on, right? And they can't drop down when they first get there. They start getting a whole bunch of heavy fire, right? And so Benavidez decides to jump out of the helicopter. Just like jump, like 15 feet or whatever. And I guess he used his
parachute. He wanted to go hardcore parkour.
Well, they didn't have anything, and they couldn't drop him. But he didn't want to. He wanted to be on the ground helping these guys. He had his med kit. That's what he wanted to do. So he just jumps out of this helicopter with his knife and his med kit.
And his hot sauce. Squirt it in their eyes.
And, these guys some of them are out in a field. The others are like kind of hiding in the trees because they had the crash, the helicopter crash. And, they're all trying to like, even just trying to contact with each other. It's like, you don't want to give your position. So they're trying to like wave at each other from like across the field to the trees. Like, hey,
without getting shot at.
Exactly. But they were getting shot at, and they knew where they were. And these guys were sitting here, like at one point they flew a helicopter by and just dropped more weapons and stuff for them. And they tried to drop water, but it would like explode. So they had to like find a better way to drop fluids to them so that they could actually drink them. Because this is something that took a long time to like get these guys out of there, right?
Wow.
And it's like,
I feel like they should make a movie out of this.
I know they should. They should. So
more details.
Yeah. So okay. So he goes ahead and he drops out of this plane, right? He jumped from the helicopter with his med bag, and he's running through the field, and he gets shot like in the leg, and he drops, and they're just like, oh crap. And then he just like gets back up and he starts to run again. And then like some grenade or something, some fired weapon, whatever, hits by him, and he gets hit in the head with like shrapnel.
Wow.
And drops again. And he gets back up, and he ends up running over to these guys. And here he is, like, already he's messed up.
Yeah.
And he just starts like, who's hurt? Who needs what? Like, he starts taking care of the
Meanwhile, he's got shrapnel in his head and he's been shot in the leg.
Yeah, he's already
he's all adrenaline out, and he's ready to save his comrades, his compadres.
He's like asking who's still alive, where everybody is, like what they need to do. He's ready to go. And like, it's crazy what this guy does. So he ends up like patching some people up, and like Brian O'Connor was ready to just let himself die. He kept fighting, like passing out because he was so wounded. And I just want to tell you, graphically, these guys really, I mean, like, we're talking some of them like arm is half hanging off and stuff. Like, they had been shot at.
Yeah.
Some of them were dead. Anyway, he was really messed up, and he'd gotten to the point where he was starting to pass out from
you
blood
say
loss.
you're talking about Brian, his friend.
Yeah, Brian. Well, Brian was not his friend.
Oh, I thought you said Brian Connor was his friend.
I told you he had a friend, and I'm trying to remember what the guy's name is. I'm actually hoping it'll refresh.
But Brian's just another guy that's in the story.
Brian is the guy who was able to come forward.
Oh, yeah, he's the one that came forward afterward and verified the story.
To say, hey, this guy should have the Medal of Honor.
Oh, okay.
He did amazing things. I was on the ground.
Yeah, he witnessed it.
And he's the one who made it so it happened.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, so he's totally messed up, and he was like ready to just give up. And like, he literally had gotten to the point where he'd kind of start to doze off from blood loss. Mm-hmm. And then he'd kind of come back to and just kind of like try to engage a little bit again. But he said that he had gotten to the point where he just was giving up.
Yeah, he was ready to
to just die. And so he goes in there and he's helping these guys, and he's sitting there talking to the helicopters on the radio, like about where, like, first he went and got the radio from another spot. And then he's sitting there like dragging guys who are more exposed, who are still alive, over into where it's a little more covered by this anthill. And he's just like, okay, well, we got to get out of here. We can't be in this field. And he's like, we need to go and get by these guys, the helicopter guys, right? Well, it turns out one of the helicopter guys is the one who was his friend. And he's still alive, but he's also messed up. And he ends up giving like cover fire and everything while these guys are trying to move out of the way. And then they realizes this is not working. They're just going to get holes blown in them everywhere, right? So they figure out like they're going to just bring in a helicopter with like lots of cover fire. And they had some planes come by, and they're not supposed to do this actually. They broke rules. They broke protocol.
Did they send in an airstrike with like napalm or something?
Yeah. And they weren't supposed to do that in Cambodia. And the officer who wanted to pull them out when they should have, he ordered that because he was upset that they had even been left, and they're not supposed to do that. And it came out on there's a code name they had for it. It came out on all the radios, so even the Kongs could hear it, which was basically anybody who is in an airplane that can come in and do fire cover, come and do it. So they might not have known what the code was, but he did it over all air transmission and called in a strike in Cambodia.
Oh, wow.
So
that's was just pretty gnarly.
Devil be damned, got to save my guys.
Yeah.
Like, I love that about, about the military, about how much they're willing to do to save people.
Okay.
So anyway, they start dropping these napalms and stuff in the forests by it, and they finally get like a helicopter in that's just like cover firing everywhere, and another one's coming down to get them, and Roy is over there picking up these guys. He's like only 5'6". He's Hispanic, descent. He's not like the tallest fellow.
Yeah.
And he's over here picking up guys and like holding them over his shoulder and stuff and dragging them across fields, like trying to kill people whenever he gets a chance to like do some cover fire. He's like going and grabbing weapons off dead bad guys and good guys. He also went to where someone was dead to get classified information off of him so that they couldn't get it. And they have a thing of like, they try not to leave weapons either.
Yeah.
For them to be able to use.
Right.
And so he was trying to even do that stuff.
He was crossing the T's and dotting the I's, doing
He was actually trying to even take their bodies because he didn't want, to leave their bodies there. So, problem. The helicopter gets too close to the tree line and the rotor hits the tree.
No.
And it goes down. And it's after he'd gotten all the guys that were on the helicopter that had crashed before on there. And when he had been crossing the field with Brian O'Connor and his translator / helper guy, he was getting them across over to the plane or the helicopter. It was waiting for him to get the rest of the survivors. And it hit that and it crashed and it went down.
Oh.
So things just got more messy. So it already had wounded on there. Wounded people who were even like close to death, and it just crushed.
Oh gosh.
So then he's getting up and being like, okay, to Brian O'Connor and the other guys, like, you guys stay here. I'm going to go see who's still alive in the helicopter, right? And he runs over there and he's pulling people out because it's smoking and he's worried it's going to blow up, right? And he doesn't want it to blow up with people in it. And that's where the pilot died, who the backup pilot I was telling you about feels bad about.
Oh, because the other one.
Yeah. Okay. And he was dead. Like when he went to check him, that guy was, he died when he got shot and like died in the crash.
Oh, okay.
And unfortunately. So then here he is pulling these people off of the plane who had just got put on or on the helicopter.
Calling it planes.
I keep calling it a plane. On the helicopter, who had just gotten, they're pulling them back off the helicopter, right? And he's sitting there trying to run them back out to like this little anthole cover, and like wait for another person to come in. And he's just like, okay, you guys have to get us out of here or we're just not going to make it out. So they end up sending in some more air fire and blowing up some more things. And then they finally feel like they've cleared the area enough that they can pull in another helicopter. And that's when this guy comes, the one who felt bad.
Oh, wow.
And he goes in and they start giving cover fire, right? And like there's a Viet Cong that starts to come out of the jungle. And one of the guys who's running the guns that are on the helicopter sees him, but he's out of range of his gun turn. And Roy notices it too and pulls up is it AK-47s they were using then? I can't remember.
They were using an AR-15.
AR, okay.
Well, it was a M16. So the M16 was the official weapon of the United States during that time.
AK-47 is what he was using.
Well, the Viet Congs had the AK-47.
Yeah. So he pulled one off the Cong or whatever, and he used that and he shot him and saved this soldier's life who was giving them backup fire.
Okay.
And then he's sitting there trying to carry people.
He's already in bad shape.
Okay, but he's
while
also
he shot that guy.
Shot more during this, and I'm going to tell you how much hits he takes by the time this is over. It's insane. So He
And we had to specify who we're talking about here. You said Brian O'Connor. He was the other guy.
Brian O'Connor is the guy who was on the ground who was able to tell the story of what happened.
Okay. But so he was the one that shot?
No, Roy did.
Hero Roy.
Our hero Roy
is the one that saved him and shot that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we don't get things confused when you say this guy and that.
Not to bring up too many of the names too is because I don't want it to get really confusing.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he ends up providing the cover fire. He ends up pulling all these people out who were hurt. Then he keeps going back in and he goes to get the Cambodian who was their like translator / help guy.
Uh-huh.
He was terrified about being left behind. And he went out to get him and he like put him over his shoulders and was like carrying him. And there was a Viet Cong that he didn't like had been crawled up or hadn't gotten shot or somehow had survived. And this guy like comes up out of the bushes and like sticks him with a knife, right? Like a bayonet.
Him, who are we talking about?
Roy. He sticks it into Roy.
Oh.
And like stabs him, right? And so Roy sets down this guy and he has hand-to-hand combat with his little knife and this guy with the bayonet. And then he stabs Roy through the side, like really deep. He gets him really deep. And Roy like rustles this guy down to the ground. And I didn't want to like get too graphic, but he ends up like killing this guy with the knife.
Wow.
In hand-to-hand combat. And he's already like, he's taken gunshots in his body. He has shrapnel in his body. And he sits there and he fights this guy. And
now he's been bayoneted.
Oh,
gosh.
So
I'll never complain about being sore from working out ever again, I promise.
So he stabbed the guy so deep, he tried to take his knife out of the guy's body and he couldn't get it out.
Oh, wow.
So he ended up giving more cover fire. He got that guy onto the ship or the helicopter. And it's really funny because he actually, when they got back to base, he actually had loaded up some people that were the enemy and hadn't realized it because he'd been so worried about not leaving people behind.
Oh.
So they had like, what was it, like 2 to 4 bodies that were actually Viet Congs.
Oh, wow.
Because they had their Cambodian people in there.
Yeah.
They were Asian too.
Yeah.
And he actually got confused sometimes as them thinking he was.
Right.
Because of his Hispanic descent.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, so he ends up getting on the helicopter after that, and he's sitting there, and he's super messed up at this point, right? And he's like trying to stay conscious, and he can't. He ends up passing out. And he was
so they finally got another helicopter in there and were able to get him out.
Well, yeah, and they got him on this he helped them get on that helicopter, and they finally got out. Okay, so they're going back, and he passes out from his wounds, but he was really worried about sitting next to his friend who had been on that first helicopter that had gone down.
Yeah, and
he was worried about him because he wasn't doing well. Not after he already had been hurt, and then when the second helicopter crashed after he had put him on there, he'd gotten more messed up.
Oh, gosh.
So he was sitting there with them, and unfortunately, he died on the way back on the helicopter. The friend of his that he had.
Oh, the one that he initially was excited to come and save.
Yeah, yeah.
Who was one of the helicopter pilots.
Who was like, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, he ended up passing out, and when they got there, they thought he was dead at first. And they also thought that he was one of the Viet Congs. And they actually were nicely taking the bodies of the soldiers that had been killed off the plane, but they just like made a pile of
off the helicopter?
Yeah, the helicopter.
Should we just start calling them heliplanes for you?
They're all
on the heliplanes.
Yeah.
Helicopter plane.
So
Planecopter.
He ends up getting thrown with the bodies of the enemy. And there's some people that go over there and start just throwing them in body bags to just like, bury somewhere. Like whatever they're going to do. They're not worried about passing them to their families. They're just going to give them a burial.
Yeah.
And he was conscious enough that he was trying to speak and everything, but he couldn't.
Oh, gosh.
And here they are zipping a body bag up on him. And then one of the guys walked over who had been on the plane or the helicopter that he had saved. And he's like, wait, that's Roy. He's not a Viet Cong. Because he looked, he looked like he could have been, especially because he was completely drenched in blood.
Oh, yeah.
And, he has a little of the pull on his eyes, like the Hispanic, like little Latin pull.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, if you look him up, you could see how it maybe could happen when he's covered with blood and stuff. They might get confused.
Okay.
So anyhow, he's like, that's Roy. And then they grab him and they're like, oh, okay. And someone decides to do some final vitals on him before they finish zipping up the bag and realizes he's alive. Like literally right before they're about to finish zipping him in.
Oh, gosh.
Which would have been an awful way to die.
Jeez.
So they realize he's alive and they rush him and to get treated. So that day,
there's a mosquito flying around me.
Wait, this is
and I want to kill this mosquito.
He went to check his vitals.
You're not hearing me. I'm being attacked.
I'm sorry.
Watching this mosquito hover around.
They were being attacked. They were attacked.
I'm trying to pay attention to the story. I'm getting eaten.
You're really experiencing it now. You're being hunted. No, but that's right. So he actually spit in the guy's face because he couldn't talk and they were going to zip him up. And he spit blood and mucus and everything into this guy's face. And that's when he realized he was alive.
Ugh.
And because he started to check his vitals, but he wasn't it looked like he wasn't going to get it. And so he just with everything he had, he spit.
Wow.
So that's what saved his life.
Literally hanging by a thread.
Yeah, literally. So he had a total of 37 separate bullet, bayonet, and shrapnel wounds from the 6-hour fight with the enemy.
Whoa.
37.
That's a lot.
And they actually used to call him Scar something because later he ends up going back and teaching, doing special forces training.
Uh-huh.
And he goes back. He's all messed up, and they keep all again. They're all, dude, you're messed up. You need to retire. And he's like, no. He's like, don't retire me. And he kept I'm doing better than you think. And he did that the first time too. He's all yeah, I can feel a little bit of something even when he couldn't. Because they kept trying to military retire him.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, so he ends up getting to the point where he can do the stuff he needs to run with the guys in special forces training that he's training and do the PT and all that. The stuff that they have to do physically in there.
Yeah.
You don't usually when those guys.
So he rebounds again.
He rebounds again. Here he is all messed up. He's scarred up. He's got shrapnel stuck in his body. He had a whole bunch of surgeries, because he had so much crap going on in his body. And he still went in and he became a teacher for special forces and was running around doing this stuff with the guys who were in training. And they finally were like, dude, you can't do this anymore. We can tell that this really hurts and it's time for you to stop. And so they encouraged him to get discharged medically. So he finally agrees to do that. And this is a cool thing that he did too. Later, after the war, they decided to take away all of that medical disability that they were giving to all those families from NAM.
Yeah.
They decided to cut it. And he actually showed up to speak to the board for himself and his fellow veterans about how much these men have sacrificed and how there were people, they have families and how wrong it would be to take away these medical benefits for his comrades. And they ended up giving it back.
Oh.
So he literally went and fought to give them back the benefits that they'd gotten taken from them.
Wow.
So he's a cool dude.
What a hero, man.
Yeah. And he did not feel like he deserved that medal, of course. And when they gave it to him, they told him people were going to want to talk to him maybe for a few weeks. People wanted to talk to him for a very long time. And
well, I'm sure you're made kind of a spectacle of, when you get an award of that magnitude.
Especially if the president hands it out to you, right? And it was President Ronald Reagan that did it. And it was in 1981. And
I wasn't here yet.
I was. Oh.
Barely.
I was like 3.
Hence the barely.
Something like that. Anyway, all of a sudden I'm like, I shouldn't talk about it.
Well, what an amazing story of selflessness and heroism. Heroism. Wow, I can't even say it. Heroism. Heroism. So, what a hero. He goes in and saves so many people and has no regard for himself and ends up pulling through after getting so many wounds.
Well, it was sweet of Brian O'Connor.
It sure made
Yeah.
It sure made Tom Hanks in Forrest Gump not look quite as cool.
Yeah. And
Forrest Gump only got bit in the butt. He got shot in the butt. He didn't get 37 different wounds. Holy crap.
And he was just running around like, I don't even know how. It must have been completely he obviously wasn't even thinking of himself at all.
No.
At all.
Like no, he was only thinking about the mission,
the guys out.
The guys and the mission, because you were saying he was doing tasks.
Well, he just did that because it was something they were supposed to do.
Part of their training.
All he cared about was getting out his guys.
Yeah.
But as a special forces, he knew that if they ended up with classified information, the enemy, it could cost more guys' lives.
Sure.
That was why he was worried about getting that documentation. And he was worried about getting, weapons out of there. And, anyway, he ended up dying in the 90s. And
what was his final age? Does it say how old was when he died? I'm just curious how long of a life he lived. Because you said he was in the military for a while before.
I actually have a picture I can show you. Other people, you'll have to just look him up. But there's a picture of him when he got his award. And he felt like it was his job to keep speaking and stuff because he felt like that's what he could do.
Yeah. Since he can't be actively in the military, he can teach.
The hero. And you know what he did for the friend that had died, that was the pilot? He went to that friend's family's home, and that friend was black. And it was a different time back then.
No, I understand. Yeah.
So he went and he actually visited his parents, and he brought and gave them his Purple Heart or whatever it is.
Oh.
Or whatever he'd gotten before they gave him this. But he did this before he got this award.
Okay.
So the award that he did get initially, that other people felt like wasn't good enough.
He gave it to the family of his friend who died. He gave it
to the family of his friend who died, and he thanked them for their sacrifice. And it meant everything to that family.
Oh, I'm sure it meant a ton to them. Yeah.
And I thought that was really sweet that he went out of his way to go there, and he told them that their son was a hero.
Wow.
Because he also, he was doing his own gunfighting on the ground too, and unfortunately we only have so much time in these podcasts. And so I couldn't get
We're just going to chirp your ears off for hours.
I don't have 12 hours worth of time to give you, or even 7.
But I love hearing stories of people that aren't as well known, who did amazing things, because there are so many incredible moments where people just did incredible, almost impossible things.
Yeah.
And their story deserves to be told and to live on.
Yeah. And, Vietnam, because it was so unpopular, there were a lot of people that didn't get a lot of recognition until later, when people started to realize that it wasn't good that they weren't.
Yeah.
And, there was some neglect that had happened and everything. And I feel like it's one of the reasons that people realize now, a lot of people realize it's more important to have respect for our military.
Yeah.
And that it's been pushed more because of how badly the men were treated who came back from Vietnam.
Right.
And, it's bad enough when you've already gone through so much to go home and have people treat you like you're a monster.
Yeah.
And you've lost people, and you were fighting against communism for your country, and
you gave up everything, and you watched people die, and you come back to just be.
And there were people who lost
spit upon.
Lots of people who lost limbs and all kinds of things.
Oh yeah.
That was a big thing over there. And like there was some nasty fighting that happened over there. And, anyway, I just felt like it would be nice to talk about a hero from a non-popular war who ended up doing great things and even went on to like encourage education in children, fought for...
Got to live an admirable life.
Yeah, he did. And, he felt like he felt like he went to his uncle's grave and told him that he had done right to their family name.
Wow.
And anyway, he's a great man, and there's a lot of great men, and there's a lot of great men with stories we'll never know.
Yeah.
Especially where everybody died, but people still tried everything they could to save other people in the group or whatever. Or there's just people who never got recognized for what they did or got very little recognition. And so I just want to give a holla out there to all of you who have any ties with the military and any ties with the
and
laws.
Who selflessly serve.
Who have served. And, whether or not you hit under fire or not, it was still sacrifice.
Yeah.
So.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for sharing. We usually our topics have varied quite a bit.
I like to keep you on your toes.
Today's a little more serious, a little more historical.
But don't you think he was like Rambo material?
Dude, he was legit Rambo. Rambo ain't got nothing on him. This is real life, not Hollywood.
Exactly.
What an amazing person.
But I think it would have been amazing to have met this man.
Yeah. And it's like, you'd almost want to hear the story, but you wouldn't want to have them tell it to you because I'm sure a lot of these guys don't tell their stories because they're so traumatizing.
Yeah.
And they want to bury all their emotions deep. I remember when I was in high school, I had a job where I worked at a movie theater, and the movie We Were Soldiers came out while I worked there. Mm-hmm. And it was a movie about Vietnam, right? Mm-hmm. Really powerful movie with Mel Gibson. Anyway, I know we're wrapping up, but it was crazy to watch, to be there at the theater and the matinee, and they would have these guys going that were Vietnam vets.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But a lot of times I'd see them leaving in the middle of the theater.
Because they just
And sometimes they were trying to hide that they were crying.
Yeah.
Because they thought they were over it and they wanted to revisit the movie to pay homage to.
Yeah.
And then,
but it was too much. But it took them back.
Yeah, it just brought up too much trauma. Yeah. But thanks again.
Yeah, well,
we love you all.
I wanted to give a holler out.
Oh, holler out.
That I read, just in case any of you want to, and to find out all the cool details. It's very well written and very engaging. Is called Legend, and it's by Eric Blem.
Eric Blem, Legend.
Yes. And
the story of Roy.
If it wasn't for the reporter who kept pushing to get this guy recognized, and Brian O'Connor for making his statement, then, this story wouldn't have come out. And there's other people in the story that I didn't name names of who are also valuable, and people who there was more information. There were some other stories. I gave you like an example of the other chopper guy who was sad about, how one of the other chopper guys died.
Yeah.
But
the one on reserve that was ready to go home.
So my point is that it would be wonderful if you guys felt like you wanted to know more about this story. You could hear more about some of these wonderful people who died or survived fighting in this in this event.
In the war.
And in that war. All right.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you, everyone. This might have been a little longer of an episode, but I wanted to.
But hey, you're still listening if you heard this part, so.
So thanks.
Smoke you. Farewell.
Bye-bye.